On May 16, 2019, U.S. officials cited reports that Iran had installed missiles on civilian motorboats in the Persian Gulf as a justification for a major deployment of U.S. military forces to the Middle East. However, this claim may ring a bit strangely to observers of Iran's military, as employing swarms of heavily armed motorboats to launch asymmetric attacks on maritime assets has long been understood to be its naval strategy, one that Tehran hasn't exactly been shy about publicizing. Take, for example, this video which depicts a swarm of rocket-armed boats unleashing a hail of rockets upon a giant mock-up of a U.S. aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf. Besides the rocket-armed motorboats, note also the presence of anti-ship ballistic missiles, detailed in this article, and other assets that could be cued to hit naval targets. In another ironic incident, a U.S. military diagram explaining Iranian tactics was founded and adopted by Iranian media to advertise its military strength, and was then breathlessly reported in the U.S. as a new Iranian threat. The U.S. Navy even designed its littoral combat ships with countering Iranian fast boats in mind, to its current regret as it reorients to great power conflict. Both civil and military shipping in the Persian Gulf is exceptionally vulnerable to mines, cruise missiles and fast boat attacks because its shallow straits force large ships to squeeze through predictable lines of transit. Iran is unusual for having two navies. The older, Artesh, regular, Iranian Navy focuses on operating large corvettes, frigates and missile boats, as well as over 24 submarines. Its area of operations is chiefly further afield in the Straits of Hormuz, the Gulf of Oman and the Indian Ocean. Its 22 Ghadir-class midget submarines, however, are well suited to ambush warfare in the shallow and rocky waters of the Persian Gulf. Meanwhile, the quasi-military Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps also has its own navy, counting over 1,500 fast boats designed to rapid swarming attacks in the shallow littoral waters of the Persian Gulf. Effectively answerable to religious hardliners rather than the head of state, the URCN has been involved in more provocative diplomatic incidents, such as the seizure of a U.S. Navy fast assault boat in January 2016. In terms of civilian boats, the URCN musters hundreds of fast in-short boats are on the pattern of the open-cabin Boston Whaler motorboat, typically fitted with unguided rocket launchers, rocket-propelled grenades, anti-tank missiles and recoilless rifles. Other popular platforms include Swedish Boghammer motorboats and rigid-hull Zodiac inflatable rubber dinghies. These small watercraft can be based on isolated islands and oil platforms in the middle of the Persian Gulf. However, Iran also is manufacturing specialized military speedboats with more impressive capabilities. One example is the Siraj 1, reverse-engineered from a British Blade Runner 51 speedboat purchased from South Africa. Photos reveal these have been armed with a multiple rocket launcher system and a heavy anti-aircraft machine gun on the prow. The Siraj can reportedly attain speeds of 55 to 72 knots. The sleek, domestically designed Zulfiqar, video here, has a maximum speed of 70 knots and mounts an integrated radar and two launch canisters for NAS-1 cruise missiles on its stern. Based on the Chinese C-704 missile, the NAS-1 has a range of 22 miles, and can use infrared, radar or television guidance. Iranian media has also released images revealing the boat's simple cockpit and computer displays, and an apparent mass production line for the boats. Even more exotic watercraft includes semi-submersible boats designed to partially submerge below the water to evade detection for sabotage, special forces insertion and spying. Finally, on the heavy end the URCN can deploy 20 Thunder-class fast attack boats armed, Chinese Haodong class, with 4 C-800 and 2 anti-ship missiles each, and 10 to 2 torpedo motorboats. If the Mad Max-style tactics of barreling towards enemies at maximum speed in swarms of overgunned open-top motor vehicles seems outlandish, it has a certain logic for Iran. The small and affordable boats have low radar signatures, which combined with speed, would significantly reduce their target's reaction time. More importantly, their sheer numbers could overwhelm the expensive defensive systems on board U.S. warships, if necessary, by running them dry of ammunition. A similar swarming missile strategy was creatively employed by Marine General Paul Van Riper, who led an Iran-like red team in a U.S. military exercise called the Millennium Challenge 2002. Van Riper launched a preemptive strike against an approaching U.S. amphibious force using a huge anti-ship cruise missile barrage that oversaturated their sophisticated Aegis air defense systems. This was combined with a swarming attack by fast boats. His attack sank 16 ships and killed 20,000 Blue Team personnel. Van Riper apparently hadn't understood that he was meant to lose the wargame in order to validate US military doctrine, so the exercise was promptly rebooted to have the right outcome. Although one can only extrapolate so much from a lone wargame, Van Riper's tactics also illustrate that motorboat swarms would only be employed as a component in a larger strategy that would likely involve long-range land-based cruise missiles, ship and drone-based reconnaissance assets to cue those missiles onto target, midget submarine attacks and naval mines. Iran's vast stock of over 3,000 naval mines, for example, could gravely impede access to the Gulf, and could be deployed via small Ashura-class boats, submarines, corvettes, helicopters and so forth. Domestic Iranian drones or Iran's bizarre ground effect hovercraft could spy on the position of enemy ships and transmit targeting coordinates to land-based missiles. Iran has imported Chinese C-802 Silkworm missiles with a strike range of 120 miles, as well as reverse-engineered its own domestic NOR or cruise missile, and begun working on a 200-mile range Ghadir ASCM. And the Persian Gulf ranges in width only between 35 to 212 miles. It's worth concluding by observing that Iran's naval strategy is one of a military underdog seeking to deter stronger opponents. Tehran wants its enemies to fear that a Western war with Iran would result in extensive damage to the tankers carrying 1/3 of the world's oil across the Straits of Hormuz, and for the US Navy to think twice whenever it deploys aircraft carriers into the Persian Gulf. From the ICN's standpoint, the US Navy's advanced warships bristling with missiles are the Death Star, and its swarms of fast boats the plucky, maneuverable fighters capable of overwhelming advanced defenses to deal a lethal blow. Whether fast boat swarms could adequately leverage the narrow littoral waters of the Persian Gulf and prove effective versus modern warships has never truly been combat tested, and hopefully, never will be.